Welcome back to the Manly Mythical Story Emporium. I'm your host, Thurston J.Y. Manly, your speaker's favorite speaker, the pugilist of pontification. And on today's episode, we are talking about the theme inappropriate or inappropriate, at least seen as inappropriate. That's how the stories are going to go. First story today will be SAT with CTE. That's SAT with CTE. And the second story is Preaching Ghostface Killer. Preaching Ghostface Killer and SAT with CTE. SAT being the test, CTE being the concussion protocol or the concussion diagnosis that they give now for, you might notice it from football. And then Preaching Ghostface Killer as in preaching. And then Ghostface Killer being the rapper from the group Wu-Tang, which is my favorite rapper. He's a storyteller. Enjoy him greatly. But I hope you enjoyed today's two stories. Please follow me on IG, Manly Mythical Story. Also on Twitter, Manly Story Pod. Facebook, Manly Mythical Story Emporium. The email, manlystory@gmail. Send those themes or ideas. And I still have to update our YouTube page. But please like, subscribe, and you'll get all the newest updates from me, Thurston J.Y. Manly, and the Manly Mythical Story Emporium. But right after this ad, you're going to get some stories. And I appreciate all our followers, specifically the ones that are international. It seems that the podcast has been catching on overseas. I'm in America, if you couldn't tell by the language I'm speaking, as well as the Southern drawl. But I really am excited about the Italian listeners. Germany, Sweden, the UK, Ecuador, Curacao, Blue Curacao. I call it Curacao because that's the liquor you use in a blue motorcycle. But Curacao and what other country? Germany, Sweden, Ireland, and America, and the whole other country of North Carolina. So appreciate all the supporters. Like and subscribe. Hopefully we will have some live videos put up on the Facebook. So please go out there and follow the Facebook. And we'll be starting to share stuff soon, maybe in season 3. We'll be able to do that, some kind of video companion. But the two stories today, SAT with CTE and Preaching Ghostface Killer. Theme, inappropriate. Maybe I'll put a question mark, inappropriate, just to see. Thank you guys. Enjoy the ad and then really get into the stories. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. SAT with CTE. The theme is inappropriate, and I come up with the story of taking the SAT with CTE. The reason I got that story and I feel that it deals with inappropriateness because I had a CTE incident or a concussion in 1997, which at the time there was a big ad ran on Snickers called I'm Batman. And it starts with a professional football player playing football. He gets sacked, he gets hit. And the first question they ask him is, do you know where you're at? And he says, New York. And the coach asks him, what is my name? He says, you're a coach. He said, perfect. And what is your name? And he says, I'm Batman. And then he begins to go through this whole thing on the sideline where he's like, I'm Batman. Hello, fellow citizens. I am Batman. And it's basically because of a concussion. Now, nowadays, we know that would lead to CTE, and it could lead to a murder, death, suicide, or suicide in general. And it could lead to all kinds of bad things. But in 1997, we thought that was a funny thing for somebody to get knocked in the head, not know their name, and think they're a comic book character. Now, I wasn't that bad off when I had my concussion, but it was kind of bad. We were playing high school football in 1997, the same year, which made it stick out to me. Same year as the Snickers ad. We were playing. I played for Lewisburg High School, and we played against Franklinton High School. And Franklinton had this big defensive lineman who played both ways, like I did, offense and defense. And we just battled the whole game. And then there was a fumble. Somebody fumbled the ball, and we were both going for it at the same time. And I think he was about to pick it up, and I just tackled him because I was more worried about like hurting people at that time than getting the ball. But I figured either way would help because I felt I had backup. My boy Scooter was there with me at the time and on the field playing. And so I ran and I tackled the guy, and he saw me. We both looked up at each other, and he didn't want to get hit as opposed to getting hit with the ball because we've been battling all day, bashing into each other. So he looked up, and I looked up at him, and we almost hit like face mask to face mask. And his was a little bit thicker metal than mine. Mine was a thin metal, wiry one. It was probably right when they stopped making leather helmets is when I got that helmet, or when that helmet was made. And we just went face to face, and it was like a loud pop. Everybody's like, ooh. And I hit him so hard that my face mask, this was like I said, metal face mask with little plastic kind of buckles to hold the face mask to the helmet. And I broke 3 of them, 3 out of 4 of those buckles. And it pushed the face mask back almost to my nose. And I hurt my head a little bit, which I should have known was a problem instantly. Because if your head is hurting through a helmet, then you got a problem. But I got up, walked it off. I kind of remember looking up at the power lines, and those power lines were moving, and I didn't know how they would be moving. And I didn't tell trainer or anything. I told one of my friends. He's like, yeah, that's not good. How those lines, because they don't look like those power lines are moving to me, but they were moving to me. My friend did not agree with me. I continued to play the game, finished the game. No concussion protocol in the coaches in the school's defense. I didn't tell them I had an injury, and finished the game. We won the game. I go off the field. I take my helmet off, and almost instantly it feels like the knot coming in. I don't know if the helmet pressure was keeping it flat, but it felt a little bit of a knot. And during the ride home, it got bigger and bigger. And that night, it got like huge. And I didn't know what to do about it. I told my parents. I think we put ice on it and some what we call camphor-phenique, which you can find in the store. You can Google that for my international listeners. Camphor-phenique. It basically comes in like a little green jar, yellow label. It's supposed to help with cuts, scrapes, and bruises. And they kind of put it on my head, and it makes it look shiny. Imagine putting Vaseline on a knot. That's what it did. So it just made it more inconspicuous, made it more conspicuous, made it obviously seen from space. Because now I have a big head anyway with a big old knot sticking off of it. It looks like my forehead was about to have a baby. And I slept, and it would have been fine because I probably could have rested it off for the next day. But the next day I had to take the SAT. And the SAT is the Scholastic Aptitude Test. I think that's what it stands for. Just pulled that off the dome. The Scholastic Aptitude Test, we always call it SAT. And that's an important test here in America. You have to take the SAT. You don't have to, but it's suggested you take the SAT to get into college. And you had to have a certain SAT score to get into college. Now, at that time period, a perfect score is 1,600, and a perfect score with me would just been 700, because 700 means you can go and qualify for collegiate athletics, which is funny because you could qualify collegiate athletics with just being a little bit above, below 50%. 1,600 is perfect. That's like 100. If you make 40% on it, you could then qualify for sports scholarships, which I thought was cool. And I went to take the test. Now, I was already like a B student, a few A's here and there. I probably averaged out to a B minus student. So I was pretty smart, intuitive kid, but I had to drive to Raleigh to a little school outside of Raleigh. I think it was called Fike High School, which is a big high school, much bigger than my Lewisburg High School. School was so big, it looked like it had as many students as was in my whole town. And I was going there to take my test. And, going to a new school or going to a new experience like that, you want to put your best foot forward. So I put my nice clothes on, got showered, looked in the mirror. I'm looking like a unicorn. That definitely looks like there's a big second head growing out of my head. And my parents figured, we just put some more Campanique on. So now my head is nice and shiny. And I went and I took the test. And I felt the test went well. I get the test grades back, 980. 980. Yeah, it was pretty bad. The English was fine. The math was horrible. When I thought back on it, maybe I couldn't focus. Maybe I couldn't stay concentrated on it. And sure enough, that's probably what it was. Because I definitely went back and took the test again because I needed better than that. Because I felt that I pretty much knew I wasn't going to get an athletic scholarship unless I walked on anyway. So I needed a better SAT score. And I went back and I did a lot better the second time around. And they take your best math and your best English part of the test, which had me closer to 1600, not at 1600. I think I came out with like a 1275, 1250 when they put it together. The best of each one, which works out good. Because that CTE, SAT, that math was struggling. But just makes you think. It goes from comedy to now you have a whole movie about dealing with concussions. Thank you guys for listening. CTE, SAT. Preaching, Ghostface Killer. There are many things that you can see as inappropriate, like wearing white after Labor Day, or wearing a tuxedo outside of the evening, because that's when tuxedos are supposed to be worn, or even asking people where they know each other from, which according to the How to Be a Gentleman handbook is also very inappropriate. Being inappropriate can also often be seen as just being rude and not courteous. But in this situation, the inappropriateness was I was not trying to be rude or inappropriate, and I was trying to be courteous and extend my knowledge of the Wu-Tang Clan, if you will. But often I tell people, if we talk about hip hop, my favorite rapper is Ghostface Killer. And the reason Ghostface Killer is my favorite rapper, I like his style. The album Supreme Clientele was great. All this blase fanboy stuff of how he is a storyteller. I love telling stories. So when somebody can rap, rhyme, tell a story, I can see the image. It's great. He's kind of under that genre of, for those that are maybe older, like a Slick Rick of telling stories. For those that are younger, I don't know who's out there that's rapping and telling stories like that. That's younger than that. I do enjoy a good Freddie Gibbs, if you will. Benny the Butcher. Maybe any of the Griselda Records guys, Benny the Butcher, all those guys are great storytellers. But as far as preaching the Ghostface Killer, it may be inappropriate to play anybody from the Wu-Tang Clan or that were signed to Def Jam or any of those records in a church. Our church, Disciples of Christ, First Christian Church of Greensboro, it had a initiative or a program where they would invite, it seemed like it was mostly the elders. I was an elder at the time, still am, to share some songs that maybe touched your soul or that led to your spiritual journey. And any of these songs they felt that really touched your soul or moved you spiritually, you should share them at the church. Now, in this church, I do have a couple other people that are in church that are huge hip hop fans, and they were asked to do their songs that touched their soul. Of course, they didn't choose any hip hop songs. My church is majority a white church, which doesn't stop them from enjoying hip hop, but it's a white church. And as churches do, they do tend to trend a little older. So we have some older white people that were asked to speak, and some of them liked hip hop. Some of them hated hip hop just in general. And some of them thought hip hop is what happens after you have a good hip surgery. But nobody chose hip hop songs because those are what touched my soul. So I chose Ghostface Killer's song, All That I Got Is You. The reason I chose Ghostface Killer's All That I Got Is You is because I bought that Ghostface Killer album after the Wu-Tang album came out. I think that was the next hip hop album I might have bought, at least out of my memory. That was the next one that I bought because, the first one I bought was MC Hammer. And did I give it a nice? No, I had MC Hammer and Michael Jackson was the first albums I ever bought. But the first ones I really remember, really hip hop that is recognized today as like real hip hop, which Hammer still is, but was Wu-Tang Clan. And then I remember having this Ghostface album and almost wanted to dress like him and be like Ghostface Killer from that right then. And in that song, All That I Got Is You is the first song I can remember that made me cry. Because in that song, he is talking about saying mama just went down, meaning that she was fighting with depression. He also talked about having to borrow toilet paper from the neighbor, and they don't have any, and they had to use newspaper. And they have a verse in there, 2 at the foot, 2 at the head. Don't want to sleep with John because he peed the bed. And just talked about how everybody has kind of band together and heating the whole house with the stove. Things that were completely out of my mindset because I had a blessed life and taken care of life, and I didn't have to go through any of that stuff that he's talking about, but I could just see the images. And I've had friends that I would pick up sometimes and take them to school, and I've gone to their houses, and their houses are considerably smaller than my house, and there's more, it's 3 or 4 of them in a house. It's in a little bit rougher area. If you want to consider any part of Lewisburg rough compared to maybe some of the neighborhoods where you guys are listening from, it's not like quote unquote. I've never been to Compton, but what they show on Compton Boys in the Hood is not that rough. It's not as rough as they try to advertise Chicago to be, or as they do advertise Chicago to be, or the Bronx or anything like that. But it's a lower income area, smaller houses, and I remember just picking them up, and they have the stove open, and I'm like coming in to close the stove, and they're like, no, you better not close that, because that's how they're heating the house. I just was unaware any of that was even a thing. And this song touched my soul, so I was like, I'm gonna do Ghostface Killer. And the lady, it was Melissa that was in charge of it, was like, okay. I pushed the song to her. It's like, can we do the song? And she's around my age, younger for the church, around my age, maybe 30s, 40s. Melissa, I hate to tell you if I'm putting more years on you. You don't look that old, but she's kind of close to my generation of thought, and she went with it. She said, "All right, yeah, Ghostface Killer, that'll work." And I had to send her the lyrics, and I sent her the part of the song that didn't have like a curse word at the beginning. I think it's a curse word at the beginning of the song. And we had to debate. And this was like one of my first like art approved things of being an artist. We had to take the peed out. Pissed. Because never sleep with John because he pissed a bit or urinating in something. We had to take the pee out. We had to like, no R. Kelly on the song. We had to cut that part out. Or she changed it to urinate. And she played the song in the church without that part. Everything else is clean. People it went over some people's head, but I gave them the breakdown. I was like, this is this. Kind of like what I did for you, was saying, these things are talking about mental health. These things are talking about poverty. These things are talking about struggle. And it just made me cry. And sometimes we got to reach out and open our heartstrings to it. And I think I opened some hearts that day. And even though it was considerably it was considered on the face considerably inappropriate, but me sitting there next to one of our older members that has been a member of the church for 40 years. This woman is 60 years old, probably listens to no hip hop songs, couldn't tell you a rap artist to save her life, but she had spoke that day, and we're sitting beside each other in the pulpit, and the lyrics are printed out in the bulletin, and she's going through and she's like, and she's just nodding her head, and that was completely worth it. Her nodding her head, seeing what the lyrics actually mean and what we see in it. So I brought this inappropriateness and made it appropriate by preaching the Ghostface Killer. You know, politics is temporary, guys, but Wu-Tang, it is forever. Thank you. Hey guys, I'd like to thank y'all for listening to the Manly Mythical Story Emporium. For our new listeners, this portion of the podcast is where I give my random thought of the day or the week. It wouldn't be the day. I don't know. I might could do a story podcast, one podcast a day, but this is where I get my thought of the week, or I wrap up the story. Once again, thank you guys for listening. Follow me on all those social medias I said at the beginning. IG, Manly Mythical Story, Twitter, Manly Story Pod, Facebook, Manly Mythical Story Emporium, email, manlystory@gmail, and YouTube, Manly Mythical Story Emporium. My name is Thurston Manley, and the random thought is, after last week's episode, I mentioned, at the end of last week's episode, I mentioned how Wile E. Coyote was hating and why did he always chase the road runner? If he orders stuff from Acme all the time and has money for that, why can't he just order food? Interesting thing. One of my friends reached out to me when I went to take my boys to one of their Boy Scout meetings. He mentioned to me that he loves the podcast and he loves how I was talking about Acme, and he realized how Acme was now Amazon. And I was like, that's a fact, because I definitely ordered some lights because I'm serious into this cornhole stuff, and we needed lights to play cornhole at night. I ordered some at 6 o'clock when my electrician friend came over. I call him my brother, Hermanos. He came over at 6 at night. We figured out the lights we wanted, ordered them. They were there before 6 the next day. So yes, Amazon is Acme. But the other thought, when you think of CTE or head injuries, because I've had a couple, I had that CT incident that I told you in the first story in 1997. I have a story, I don't know which episode it's on, where I was driving a car, somebody hit us, and I hit my head on the windshield, and it needed like several stitches. Plus, I had another head injury where I was being dumb. I dropped something, and I hit my head on the corner of our buffet in the dining room. So I have like 2 good dents in there. And in most of those incidents, I've had to put a Band-Aid on my head. And besides the fact that Band-Aids are racist because they're pink, and the reason Band-Aids are pink is because they're supposed to be flesh colored, which means that everybody's flesh is white, apparently, according to Band-Aid. Yeah, racist Band-Aids. You can get color appropriate Band-Aids now, which I do appreciate. But when you're a black man with a pink Band-Aid on your head, and I mean your head, like not just like your face, like in a Nelly situation, but like eyebrow up to anywhere else, you ever realize how much you have to explain that to somebody, and how you ever look at somebody else with a Band-Aid on their head and you're just like, oh, what happened? Like it just looks like you don't have it together. If you go into an interview, you could have be dressed appropriately and everything else, but if you have a Band-Aid on your face to your head, maybe even above the neck in an interview, but if you definitely have it above your eyebrows, it's like you don't have your life together at all. Like that, this person is homeless and they probably fought some pit bull puppies and for a ham bone. It's just, to me, maybe that's just me, but if I see somebody walking down the street and they got a Band-Aid on their head, it's like, what really went wrong? Like, to damage your face to your head, it's like, what happened? Like, you can see a Band-Aid on the leg. Oh, we walked through some briars. You got a Band-Aid on your arm. Maybe he had a flu shot. If you have it on the other part, maybe he donated plasma, or he's doing heroin. Even if you're doing heroin, at least you didn't injure your head. You didn't fall over, because heroin addicts don't fall over. But that's my random thought, is Band-Aids on the head. And